Welcome to Raw and Refined, the Gentleman's Hour, where we're going to have engaging conversation with middle-aged black men about what's going on. We welcome you to listen, like, comment, and subscribe with the hope that we will encourage others to join us for future conversations. We always like to start off with a toast. And with that toast, it's because we're gentlemen and we like to do it raw and refined.
A couple weeks ago, I came across an image that stopped me in my tracks. I was like, okay, now this ain't cool. Just kind of really disappointed me kind of greatly, but I mean, understandably so, because it was talking about we're at a place now where historically we've never seen young black males committing suicide at the rate that we are now. The image I was looking at, it was a Facebook image of an article, like a screenshot of an article. And I ended up pulling a couple of different articles that was talking about the stats and things like that. But I reached out to John and Greg. I was like, this is an issue we need to talk about. This is growing. It's going in the wrong direction. And John said, well, I got the perfect person for us to bring in on this, because I've said it a million times to John and Greg that I'm a huge fan of experts, right? I say expertise matters. Experts get to the core of the issue, right? They hone right on in on it. They cut through all of the mess and keep the conversation simple. And so John was like, I got the perfect brother. It's a frat brother of mine. His brother named Keon Lewis. And he's all over this, man. And so we was like, all right, cool. So today we're talking about, the title of our episode is Young Black Men Are Dying by Suicide at Historic Rates. What's happening to our sons? And so, as always, we'd like to start off with a toast, as John mentioned in our opening. So I'm going to go around robin, and I'm going to ask Keon to go first and tell us, what are you drinking today, Keon?
So I got I'm keeping it simple today. I got a little blue moon on me today. So toast it up to the brothers. I appreciate this opportunity to be with you all today. So salute.
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 John, what you got?
Man, I got a couple things I'm rocking today. One, I've always got my ice water that I have to just stay hydrated through the calls today, but I needed something to get me a little pepped up because I know we're about to have a good conversation today. But I got a little zero sugar cherry float Coca-Cola today.
Oh boy.
A little
John,
something,
John,
taking a
something
walk
there,
on the
little
wild
something.
side here.
Yeah, that's right. Got to get a little adventurous sometimes.
There we go.
I thought about dirtying it up a little bit. Y'all heard about these dirty sodas that are now going on out there, right?
Yeah.
No, I
Man,
haven't. What's
nah,
dirty
brother.
soda?
So dirty soda would be like if I take this and then add like some vanilla syrup to it, maybe a little cherry
Mhm.
syrup, and then some creamer to it. It makes it what they call a dirty drink. And then you just kind of go from there. It just gives it a little different kind of flavor to it all.
And one that will have you bouncing off the walls too.
Exactly. Exactly. So
That little sugar
I
bolus.
kept it simple, right?
Right. Okay. What'd you do, GK?
Well, it is hot here in Chicago, so needed something to cool down. So nothing like a little sparkle something in
There
a
you
chill
go.
glass. So a little sparkling wine here.
There you go, brother. I was looking to see if I had a Prosecco in the back of the fridge. I was thinking about that earlier because I was like, something cool, crisp, and sparkling. So I didn't have one of those, so I went with my standby, which also is sparkling and cool and crisp. But today I'm doing raspberry lemonade, my sparkling
There
ice.
you go.
It's raspberry lemonade. And I don't think I made it dirty, John. I added a splash of lemon juice and a splash of lime juice to it also.
All right.
Okay, all right. That's pretty good, though.
That's pretty
freshen
it
so,
up a little
Keon, one
bit.
thing about Rick, though, it ain't a drink until it's in the Yeti. So it's got to be in the Yeti.
My man.
And there it is. All right.
Everybody has a standard. I like it.
That's right.
I like it.
That's right.
I'm with you on
Yeah.
that.
They used to clown me in some of our earlier episodes because they considered the Yeti inappropriate for certain beverages.
It's a major violation to have bourbon in a.
That's right.
Yeah.
I did not have it. No. I had some other liquor in the Yeti.
So bourbon, you gotta ask,
to
brother.
be clear,
The
right?
bourbon was in the glass. But literally almost a year ago, we had some flood damage at the crib, and so stuff was packed up, and I didn't know where certain things were, but I always know where the Yeti is. So
there you go. Always.
That's right. That's
It
right.
cost enough.
That's
yeah,
right.
you know. Well, this one was a gift. This one is from my university, so I'm not showing
All
that
right.
side, but it's got the big university label on it.
There you go.
Oh.
All right. So now you just made me. I'm gonna have to show you the real Yeti.
All right.
now you gotta go get it.
Right. Our business partner, Halver Travel, right?
There you
Oh,
go.
okay.
There you
That's
go.
that's the
A
monster
little
Yeti.
cross branding.
There you go,
there.
brother.
Right.
So
Now
this
you're
is
talking.
you can see the size comparison, right?
Yes.
That's the ridiculous one. But this one, yeah, this one's you see it's got our branding on there and all of that.
Love
brother.
it.
So
Nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
Nice.
this is a Yeti house. Yeah. So to get back to what we were actually talking about here today, right? We're not talking about beverages exclusively, but we're gonna have one of those episodes soon.
yeah,
we
make
talked
sure you invite
about
me
it
for that
here.
one too. I love to learn on that one too.
We
All
might,
right.
we might have that one. We might have to have the audience present for that one
Yeah.
when we get to that
That's
one.
Yeah.
Today's guest isn't simply someone who has opinions about mental health. All right. He's helping shape suicide prevention efforts nationally. He is the AFSP Chapter Leadership Council member. He's leadership development, equity focused strategic planning, Omega Psi Phi, Bacillus, mentorship, community leadership. Those are just some of the things that he's involved with over there in North Carolina. So Keon Lewis, soon to be, well, I don't know how soon, so let me not project too fast. He might
No,
have a
do
little ways to
project.
go
I
still, but
happily accept. We around
but
that
I
corner.
said it
We're
will
getting
be, but
close.
I'm not going to say soon be. It might be a little longer than some time, but he will soon be Dr. Keon Lewis.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Looking
sir.
forward to that. So
Yes,
welcome,
sir.
brother.
No,
Welcome to the
welcome.
show.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you
Outstanding.
for the invitation. I appreciate it.
We are excited to have you on, as Rick said, and you and I know we share another bond as well, and just
Yes,
been
sir.
so excited. And I tell you this all the time. I am amazed and appreciative of all that you are doing and trying to do for not just you, but for our community and our brothers and our young men as well. So it's an honor, my brother. It's an honor to have. And yes, GK, he represents a different D9 fraternity, but we
I
gonna
was
let
I'm so
him
proud of
be.
you, Greg.
Yeah.
I was sitting there saying to myself, I'm so proud of Greg. Look at him.
I know it's coming at some point, so
I
I'm
was
just
going to
gonna
say
go ahead.
outnumbered, but
Just something
So
about that
Keon,
royal purple and old gold. Just something about it.
There you
When
go.
we
There you
when
go.
we finish, Keon, before we get off, I have to tell you one story about Greg and one of your fraternity brothers from some years and years ago.
Please do.
But that's not
Please
for
do.
the public. That's all. That's
That's
for
right.
that's
That's right.
that's for
That's
after
right.
we hit the stop
That's
button.
right.
Yeah,
That's
we got to keep
That's
that one private.
That's right. That's right.
Vivid.
All right, folks. And as you can see, we still like to bring a little levity to our conversations as well. But
Yeah.
trust us, we know that this is a serious conversation, and we're
Indeed.
about to get into some of this information as well. So
Absolutely.
let's go ahead and get started here. Many headlines, especially here recently,
Yeah.
have been talking about young Black men and the rate of suicide that we're seeing. Studies are showing that young Black men right now are outpacing white men, which is truly a surprise, especially when it comes to something of this magnitude.
Yep.
Keon, you want to talk a little bit about that, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely, my brother. So the first thing that, and just as you stated brilliantly, now we got to dispel this myth that as a culture, as an ethnicity, and just as a people, that we don't die by suicide, because it is very real. And one of the things that I definitely wanted to make sure that we address is when we hear these statistics, right? And when we hear these alarming rates, and understanding the difference between the two. And what I mean by that is this: when we're talking about the actual suicide numbers, right? And we break it down by race and ethnicity, the American Indian and Alaskan Native population has the highest rate of suicide amongst our populations. Then from there, it goes from Alaska Native American Indian to non-Hispanic white to Hawaiian Native, other Pacific Islander to non-Hispanic multicultural. And then at fifth, it's Black. So naturally, when we hear that, we think, okay, well, we're just fifth on the list, but it's still an alarming number, right? But going to what my brother Rick just stated, here is what really captures our attention is when we see the headlines in that now we're passing that. And what they mean by that is over the course of the last decade, when we look at just the span of 2014 to 2024, our rate of suicide has taken laps in comparison to other race and ethnicity. So to put that into even greater perspective, over that course of that last decade, for the white population, it increased by 5%. Hispanic, 27%. Black, 53%. And that's what gives us the alarm. That's what frightens us. And that's what makes conversations like these very necessary, because it's not so much just the general number, but it's the direction and trajectory that we're heading. And if we're not careful, we're going to see our brothers, we're going to see our population climb up that chart to inevitably become in the top three. And that's not what we want. We don't want it for anybody, but that's the rate and that's the direction that we're heading.
Wow, 53%. That's huge.
That's huge.
And that's over a 10-year period.
Just 10 years. So imagine what that's going to look like in another 10 years, right? So we have to be proactive right now.
Totally. So when you first were you're doing your research, you're working and having conversations out there in the community, and you saw these numbers. I mean, did it surprise you? I mean, it sounds like it did, but your perspective.
Yeah. So to kind of really put that into even greater perspective, what brought me into this space was becoming a volunteer for AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Okay.
And one of their signature fundraiser events is called the Out of the Darkness Walk. And every year throughout the nation and primarily the largest cities in each state host these walks, which invites the community to learn about these very statistics and what's happening in their areas, but also to be more mindful of what resources are available to them to be able to access. And I vividly remember going to my first Out of the Darkness walk as a volunteer. And so we got this wall, as we like to call, where it just kind of shows like different data, different statistics that we will put on yard signs throughout the park or wherever we're hosting these walks. And it just kind of wakes you up to why we need to have these type of community events. And I just remember coming to the sign talking about the suicide rates rising for Black youth and especially for Black men. And it immediately caught my eye, just like with Rick. It was like, I never recalled hearing about this. You always heard about it if it's a major celebrity, a major athlete, superstar. You hear about those things, but you never heard about the everyday people like us. And so seeing that for the first time kind of made me want to dig deeper into it and kind of do my own respective research. And then from there, that really began my advocacy and allyship journey with AFSP over the course of these last 10 years. And now being in it and serving on the National Council, now I'm having access to this research and to this data and speaking with other subject matter experts to see that this is very real. And we have to be vigilant about it, but we got to become more aware and get this information out there so that it doesn't become as alarming as it is now. It's like we really need to learn about it, and we really need to make it more accessible to our community.
Right. Everyone needs to know these numbers. Everyone needs
We
to
gotta
know
know
the
it.
whys, what's going on, why it's happening, what's causing this, so
Exactly.
that everybody can get involved in doing a little something for the people that are around them.
Right.
Exactly. Yep.
So, Keon, if I could ask you just really
Yeah.
a couple things. I imagine that there is some variation in these rates with respect to age, and I just wonder if you have the data on that. There, like if you're younger, older, and is there sort of a broadly understood explanation for it?
Yep. Yep.
If it's sort of over 10 years, has it increased since COVID, or like,
Right.
is there sort of an analysis of what caused that spike?
Yeah, and Brother Carl, you can back me up on this. So you're absolutely right. There is a dynamic when we're looking at it from the age disparities, right? When I initially began my volunteerism with AFSP, the magic number used to be, they used to look at it from the ages of 18 to 32 as the age range, especially for men, as having the highest suicide rates, the highest attempts. And so that used to be the marker, right? But then COVID hit. And all of a sudden you saw the dynamic shift from 18 to 13 to 32.
Mm.
And it expanded it even more. And not only that, but it also really kind of honed in on the age group of, 13 to 24, where suicide became the second leading cause of death.
Wow.
And it still is. And
Wow.
that's what's frightening about this.
Yeah.
We talk about cancer, we talk about motor vehicle accidents, we talk about homicides. Even now, we're even more comfortable talking about AIDS and cancer and things of that nature. But when it comes to suicide, that stigma of it, we don't have enough conversations around it. And so that was one of the things that really stood out to me, coming into this space, was seeing the age range, and especially amongst our middle school students to high school to early college adults,
Oh,
that this was their second leading cause of death.
wow.
And it still is. And so now, even with our older population, it may not be as high on the list. It's still prevalent. It is still a factor. But the biggest range that we're really paying attention to now is our youth to our young adults.
Mm.
No, definitely impactful. And these statistics are present and they're growing, which is why this discussion is again such a timely discussion for us to have, and to have Brother Lewis on to help us have this conversation as well. Given that we now have kind of the base of what's going on there, I think this is a great time, and I think we alluded to it some, is now to talk about really the why. Why do we think this is going on right now? And a few topics that we might want to hit. Keon, brothers, everybody wants to get involved, please do. But I think a few things that we have to consider is trauma, be it childhood trauma mostly, especially since we're seeing this in our young adults at such an alarming rate. Could it be hardships either personally or professionally, which can result in possible economic hardships that lead to suicide? Could it be the status of where we are? Racism is abounding right now, and things like this is difficult for people to try to understand and figure out what to do about it. Bullying, mistrust, on the concept of, you said it earlier, Rick, man up, stay strong, get over it, you'll be all right, and these things. So I know that's a lot to throw out there right now, but let's try to see if maybe we can hit a few of those topics and just see if we think of why that may be leading to what we're seeing now. And if you like, Keon, maybe have it start off with just maybe trauma and what your thoughts are behind that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head perfectly, especially when we're talking about trauma and the fact that there used to be a point in time where we would just hear about it or maybe read about it in the newspaper every now and then. If something was significant, we'll see it on the news. Now we're in a space where we're seeing it and experiencing it in real time. And I think that's the part that has really escalated and heightened the dynamics that we're seeing in mental health and suicide rates amongst our youth, because now everything is accessible. We're in this streaming age. We're in this live concept to where, as I go through my daily life now, I'm literally a influencer because I got a camera that follows me and watches me do what I do every single day. And there's no telling what that camera and what that mic is going to catch in those moments, right? So now we have these things playing out. And in the midst of all this, we're throwing in AI and totally flipping the world on its head to where now we can't tell what's what anymore. We can't tell what is real, what is fake. And so that adds an additional element, right, to the trauma and what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. And so with these young minds who are glued to this technology, to their phones and to their tablets and to their devices, when you have an algorithm that's feeding this kind of diet to you, Like we're talking about, like what you consume, you are what you eat, you are what you consume, and
That's
and
right.
that is what is becoming of them. And I think as the technology evolves and as these things take place, I think that is one of the more significant factors as to why we see the trauma, the impact that it's having, is that now it has found a way to infuse into the advancement of technology, and it is all happening at a rapid rate.
I so agree. The inundation is the key, right? For these young brains, right? One of the things that I've had so many conversations with people over the years and talking about from an education context quite often, but really just looking at the maturation of a human brain, right? We call people adults. It kind of annoys me when I'm watching the news. And today it happened, and they said they described this 16-year-old as a man. These two men committed this crime or something. One was 16 and one was 18. And I'm saying to myself, these aren't men. These are at best teenagers. They're boys. They're kids.
Absolutely.
And especially
Underdeveloped.
underdeveloped intellectually in terms of the brain doesn't get you're not fully baked until you're about 26, 27, somewhere in there. We call
There
them
you go.
adults. At 21 you can drink, you can go to war at 18, this, that, and all of these other things. These aren't grown folks yet. Their
No,
brains aren't done. And their
no.
brains are being inundated with, like you said, with these algorithms that are designed to addict them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about young addicted brains that aren't fully formed, that haven't developed. And I'm gonna step back, but that right there, this piece, just that inundation, all of that, there's so much opportunity for the trauma, like you said. It's just there all day, 24/7. And these young people have access to it, and they are drawn to it in a way that we weren't, because we got into it as adults. Our brains were already done when we got hit with this stuff.
Right, right. And just like you stated, when you talk about the technology, this technology is designed specifically for that reason. And as simple as you looking at a clip for a few seconds, it is able to capture that. And at that point, the technology has decided this is the kind of content you want. This is what you like. So I'm going to keep feeding this in your timeline till inevitably it gets to the point where that's the only thing that you see. And so think about the perception of the world that a young, underdeveloped mind has when all they see is war and violence and chaos and fights, suicide, things of that nature. Then to them, they don't know that there's light. They don't know that there's hope. They don't know that there's support. And so we have to be mindful of that.
As a layperson myself, I've observed that social media, which we're talking about, is like there's a sort of a growing movement to limit the access of young folks to social media. I want to say some states are doing it in the US, and I know certainly some countries, certainly in Europe, are trying to do it. So I think people are starting at least to wrestle with the impact of social media. I'm wondering if any of the data that you've seen suggest that there's some variation sort of between like Black youth or Black young folks versus
Oh yeah.
other demos.
Oh yeah. And where we're seeing the disproportionate rates is young Black girls. Our young Black women are being hit the hardest. Now, granted, for young Black men, we're dying at a higher rate, but statistically, young Black girls are having more attempts.
Wow.
And that creates a whole nother conversation, right? Because it's about identity, it's about acceptance, it's about, hey, social media says this is what beauty looks like. So I want to replicate that, right? So that is where the newest data has taken us to be more mindful of how we project ourselves, how we speak, how we carry ourselves around our young Black women. And so that's why I always applaud and I appreciate when brothers are on calls like this and when brothers in this space and talking about the importance of being a reflection of the type of men they want to have in their daughters' lives or in their nieces' lives. Or like me, I don't have a daughter, but I have a few goddaughters. So I want to make sure that the way that I carry and represent myself is indicative of the type of man I want them to have in their respective lives.
Most definitely, man. And so, yeah, when it comes to trauma, we know that things typically have a start that festers. And brothers spoke very well about how outside influences, and right now, biggest influences being social media and TV, AI, not even to talk about the gamers, the video gamers. There used to be conversation about young kids because they can always reset in a game, that the thought would be that they could reset in life.
Yeah.
And once you committed, once you had an episode that unfortunately ended your life, there's no reset to that. And
Mm-mm.
that's the part that I think is still a struggle, because that's their world. Their world is seeing, well, no, I just hit reset. We start this all over again and be better at it the next time around. And unfortunately, that's not what we see. So we have to be mindful of the trauma that's going on with our youth. And I appreciate what you said, Keon. As men, we have to be able to be there for our youth. We have to be able to be there in order to help guide them through a lot that's going on. Our kids are growing up at a rate that we didn't grow up at that same rate. You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah. It's night and
And
day.
right. And you said it, Rick, their brains just aren't quite there yet to process what all of that means and how
And
to
their brains are
manage
being
through it.
transformed. Their brains are being
Exactly.
changed
Literally, we know
by
that
this,
now.
literally,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And John,
Exactly.
I want to ask you, because you were talking about it, trauma. There's all kinds of trauma. You mentioned racial trauma earlier, which is very real. What happens when trauma is not being processed, Doc? Tell us about that.
Yeah.
When you don't deal with it, right? Because it could be physical trauma, it could be emotional, psychological trauma, but what's the ramifications of not dealing with that properly? We were talking before we got started about the fact that it's a struggle to get a lot of Black people to even consider mental health services. So when you're not getting that and you're just sitting on that, what happens to you?
Oh, it affects us in so many ways. You've heard me talk on times before about the mental and the physical truly go together. So if the mental's not working right, the physical's going to not work right soon, and vice versa as well. So we have to, one, be open to, hey, there may be something that may not be quite right. And that means we need to go ahead and seek help for that. If we'll go seek help for our toe hurting or our chest hurting, we need to go seek help when psychologically and mentally we're hurting as well, because it's all about illness, disease process, and how we can try to overcome that. But sometimes we need that professional help in order to be better and understand better what's going on as well. So it takes a toll on us. And if you just continue to be bombarded with that, so let's say we grew up and unfortunately you had an abusive parent, and you're growing up through that, or you're seeing that, seeing what's happening to your parent or to a sibling and things, and then you're growing up and you start to see it on TV. You start to see it in the video games. Used to be a game called Grand Theft Auto, where they were just going around just beating folks, and therefore now you're like, oh, well,
Right,
this must
right,
be what it is. And then you kept becoming a man, so to speak, and now you think that's what the norm should be. And you come to find out, no, that's not it. You get locked up, you done, your life is done, and for a lot, that can become an avenue for them to say, hey, I can't take this anymore. I got to go.
right.
Or
Or
it's
they might
growing
not
up
have
in a
even
struggle.
thought about it, John.
Right.
It might have just been an automatic thing because of how often or how much they got into that game, and that just became an automatic response.
Exactly. Exactly. But what did we say earlier?
Mm-hmm.
They think they can just reset, start it all over again. And unfortunately, there's no
Right.
reset when it comes to real life. And that's the thing. So we'll keep having that conversation as
And
well.
That's so
and
true.
John, you know what's so wild hearing you all describe this? This was the very thing that the movie The Matrix predicted.
Mm.
Yep.
Yep.
I kid you not. I forgot what brought the conversation on, but I remember having a conversation with some colleagues, and we were just thinking about something, and somebody, just brought up the whole thing about plugging in, plugging out, and connecting in this
Hmm.
virtual space. I was like, yo, we were warned about this 30 plus years ago. And they're like, what you mean?
Mhm.
I said, The Matrix.
Right.
And you just kind of see everybody sit back going, oh my God, you're
Yeah.
right.
Right. Right.
You are right. We are in that space now where, because of the dynamics, because of the technology, because of how real and the access of it and just the dynamics of it,
Hmm.
the these youth and this generation can't tell whether they're plugged in or not.
Right. Right.
Well, that's a fascinating point about The Matrix, the
Mm.
the movie, because there's this whole, I guess, subculture that is very much tied to kind of what we're doing, right? Podcasting, where
Right.
they call it, I guess they call it the red pill versus the blue
The blue
pill,
pill. Yeah.
and it's sort of this hyper masculine
Mm-hmm.
space that, by the way, we don't play in. A hyper masculine, highly critical of women, particularly
Oh,
harshly
yeah.
towards Black women.
Yes.
And it's sort of this rise of sort of the red pill culture or paradigm, whatever you want to call it. It all
Yeah.
feels really connected to what we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
just think it's interesting that you raised the Matrix.
Yeah. And I mean, and you think about it, right? You think about how that movie took us on that trilogy, right? It took us on this journey, and you have these different factions. Exactly what you described, okay, where you got this group who believes, hey, don't take the pill, stay where you are. You're happy, you're good with this. And then you have this group who's like, hey, you need to open your mind, you need to stay woke, you need to do this. And then you got those who right in between, like, listen, you got to figure out how to navigate between both. You got to understand what's being asked of you here, what's being asked of you there. And
Mhm.
it is very real.
Mhm.
It is very real. And I think from that, you have to be mindful of self. You have to have a high level of discernment, and you got to surround yourself with people who have your best interest in mind, mentally, physically, spiritually, who want to see the best come out of you and from you and within your family and your job and so forth. But this dynamic is very real. This, although the movie was make believe in a sense, but this idea and this
In a
concept
sense.
of a matrix, in a
Yeah.
sense, yeah,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a sense, this dynamic is very real.
We are very quickly coming to a crossroads with respect to AI.
Yeah, we
It's
Right.
are.
very real.
We are.
We're building robots that are day by day getting more and more human-like in their
Mm-hmm.
behaviors and performance. And soon
Mm-hmm.
robots will be making robots. AI will be building
Yes, sir.
AI. It's
Yes,
just a few
sir.
years away. So that's all very real. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
whole nother podcast we can have.
Oh
Right.
yeah. Oh yeah.
We could
Yeah. Look,
fall off
man.
an abyss into
Right.
AI,
Right. Well,
One
we
of the
talked
man.
a
things.
little bit. Go ahead, Greg. Go ahead, GK.
No, I'm sorry. I wanted to dig a little bit into this question around trauma.
hmm
And there's a way in which that word today feels almost it's been used in a way that I think outside of professionals like y'all who understand that it has a specific meaning,
Yeah.
that it's a word that is being, to my mind, the importance of understanding what it truly means is being devalued because of its overuse. So
Yeah.
I often am just wanting, if you could sort of offer, either one of y'all, since y'all both are health folks, what do we mean? What are we talking about when we even use the word trauma, and how it might even relate to what we're talking about today?
I think that's a great question, Greg. And I think you're right when it comes to trauma. Trauma can mean different things to different people. I would say, at least in the context of how I think I was trying to present it, I would say it's something that is distress. It's something that unfortunately a disturbing type of experience that someone had, and then how difficult was it to be able to really cope with that? What were the effects of it? And I think when I think of trauma, I'm thinking more in that lines, and more from a mental health conversation as it relates to trauma versus a physical trauma or a social trauma. So
Mhm.
I think if we're talking, to give you what I'm thinking of, that's kind of
Yeah.
where I was going with it.
Yeah. And I would even piggyback on that too, to where when we're talking about, especially in the spaces that I've had a chance to do research with and leadership meetings and developing things of that nature, we always look at it from the sense of, just as Brother Card stated, the differences and understanding the differences between psychological trauma and physical trauma, right? And even taking a step deeper with that and understanding the types of traumatic events, where if something is acute or if something is chronic or if something is complex, each one shares its own unique definition, from being a single event to
Mhm.
something that was prolonged or something that's just a combination of all these things of life and lived experiences and stuff that happened at work, or something that just happened that's brand new that creates this. So it's a lot of different definitions. So just like you stated, GK, when people are putting out there, I think they're making it too general without really being specific in the type of trauma that has taken place and how those specific impacts can vary from one another.
Thank you
And I
for
think,
that.
if anything, that would lead into, again, black bells. We're speaking about a lot of that today. Is with us growing up, there's an equation of your emotional stability with your masculinity. If you weren't able to control yourself or be able to suck it up or stay strong, whatever that means, then there was a question of your masculinity as a result of that. But again, with whatever type of trauma has occurred, that's going to define your masculinity in some form or fashion as well. And everybody has had some form of trauma throughout their life. I think folks would have to just kind of see what level of impact that actually had on you. But everyone has had to have some form of trauma through life as well. And again, we have to get to a point where we're okay with folks being emotional about situations that are going on. You got to be okay with being not comfortable with what's happening, and in a way be able to express that, or else it's going to build up inside, and that's going to in and of itself cause a lot of different issues physically and mentally, as well as you talked to that earlier, Rick, as well.
Yeah,
I
I
give you,
think.
I give you a great example of
Go
that,
ahead. Go ahead.
GK. And not to cut you off, Rick. Y'all remember Nick Anderson from the Orlando Magic?
Oh yeah, this in Illini, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I played with that. I played against that brother many a time.
Yeah. So right, the skills, the talent.
Oh,
Do you all recall the mental distress and the psychological trauma he experienced from missing those
after
2 free
missing the free.
throws that would have put them up to win that first game in that series in the finals? Right?
Yep.
That's an example
Shaq
of
still
how,
takes shots at him to this day.
till this day.
Somebody just talked about it recently on a podcast. I forget who it was.
So you think about, from those on the outside looking at it, thinking, oh man, it's just a game. It's just free throws. In that moment, he went through a psychological traumatic event. Because to him, he's saying to himself, I hit these free throws. We win this game. Maybe we win this series. Maybe the whole trajectory changes. I don't know. But whatever happened after that moment, he was never the same.
Yeah, his career was very different.
It was very different. The training was different. The focus shifted. It took on a whole new realm, and it went from being just simply a bad game or a bad moment to something that impacted him psychologically for the rest of his life. And then going back to Rick's point, when you hear it is 30 plus years later and people still bring it up, that does something to you mentally. That messes with your mental health. And so going back to the original point, when we talk about these things and when I hear people throw the word trauma out there, they think that this is just something that just happens in a moment and that's it. No, this sticks with you. It sticks with people, some longer than others, some a little more vigilant than others, but trauma is very real. It impacts us differently, and it's not something that just magically goes away.
So were any of you told not to cry when you were a kid? That kind of thing?
Yeah.
Don't cry.
Oh, by somebody, yeah.
I'll give you something to cry about.
Tough it out.
What about in your house? I had to think about that because I've told you all many a time, and Greg and John know, I was raised by a Vietnam veteran Marine. So when I was growing up, I just remember all the time this one saying. He used to always say, hardcore, mean, nasty. Right? That was one of their sayings. But I grew up, it was a very structured, regimented household in many respects. But never, ever was I told not to cry. Now, my mother is incredibly stoic as an individual, and so my wife has even told me that there have been circumstances where she's mentioned that Rick is probably going to cry in this situation or something like that. Like at my father's funeral, And yes, I
Mhm.
did. And things like that. But even in those situations, never was anybody ever told me,
Don't cry.
men don't cry or don't
Right.
cry. I
Yeah.
know I've seen that
It's
happen to a lot of
interesting.
other people.
Yeah.
No one's ever told me in my household, no one ever told me to man up.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one ever told me just to get over it or keep it moving either.
Yeah.
In my household. In other places, I think I was fortunate in that respect, and that in my household, my parents let me be, right?
Right. Right.
They provided support, they provided encouragement in certain situations, they provided discipline and structure, and they provided example. Like I said, I had all kinds of Marine veterans in my house. My hand-to-hand training, I've told you many times, John. I got trained in my hand-to-hand by a Marine Corps drill sergeant. Another one of his Marine Corps buddies taught us how to box as shorts. All of that kind of stuff. So there were those pieces, and there were example, but nobody ever said, real men don't do this, or men don't cry, or be tough. That kind of.
Yeah, you make an excellent point, because I know for me, because even for my situation growing up, it was very unique, because even now I'm comfortable in speaking about it, that I was brought into this world by teenage parents. And so my first 13 years of being raised was courtesy of my grandmother and my aunt. So the discipline was very unique. It was very structured in a way. So there was never a moment where they told me not to cry or wasn't okay to cry. But in the same token, when you're talking about growing up in a house with veterans, all of the males in my family all came through Fort Bragg. So it was there, from my uncles, even down to my father, when eventually moved into the home with my father and my mother. It was okay to, but there was also moments of being reminded, hey, suck it up, toughen up, and get through this and push through. And it wasn't until outside of the house, playing sports and playing athletics, dealing with my coaches and the staff like that. Now, they were the ones that was like, nah, I better not see you cry. You better suck it up. You fight through the pain, you go through it. But I was fortunate enough to get that nourishment, get that love at home. But like you said, it was never to the point at home where they said, you can't do this. It was outside of the home where, ironically enough, where we spent the most of our time in school and class and in sports and athletics, they were the ones like, nah, you better not cry or I'll give you something to cry about.
I saw it in those contexts. I saw it in those contexts, but I think I was programmed so well at home that the keep it moving part was automatically built in for me at that point. They never had to tell me to suck it up or keep going, because I was just going to. Because of the programming. But that is where you used to see it, and that's where that social pressure was. Definitely from your peers. Somebody was going to be quick to point it out. Somebody was going to be quick to call you a punk or whatever the equivalent under that circumstance.
I'm struck by Keon saying, I'm going to give you something to cry about.
Give you something to cry about.
That was
I've heard that from a lot of people in a lot of sets, but
Yeah.
Heard that budget.
Oh, yes, sir.
You better stop crying or I'm going to give you something to cry about.
Right.
That's going to help.
That's an interesting point. I never felt bad about crying in the house that I grew up in. My dad's Vietnam vet too, but he was never like, don't cry. Would ask, why you crying?
Right.
But outside the crib, man, there's a whole lot of incentive not to cry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of negative sanction for crying.
Yes. True that.
Absolutely.
I agree with you all as well. I mean, I primarily grew up with my mother and my grandmother as my care providers and parents in my role. So I didn't really have too much of the male figure in that, except for my brothers here, really. But yeah, I didn't. That wasn't something.
Your mom
that
was military, though. What was that like?
Yeah, your mom was military too.
But she was military. When I was in 7th grade, she went to the military. So a little bit different. You're starting off with that kind of level of experience. But I agree with you. And I think what this also leads to say is that hopefully through the home, we had opportunities to be able to be vulnerable, and hopefully not in a way that was going to be rejected as well. And I think that's something that has helped us to grow into who we are. But we also recognize that there are folks out there who haven't had that similar experience.
Exactly.
To go
There
through
you
this
go.
as well.
That's
and
it.
things. So we get it, and this is again why these conversations are important and why we need to be okay talking about these things that have happened and going on as well.
Yeah.
So, Keon, I'm going to ask, brother, what would you think of as the difference between healthy resilience
Mm.
versus emotional suppression?
Whew. But I'm
Mm.
gonna tell you, what's that song say? It's a thin line between love and hate.
Good one. Yeah.
Brother, look here. It is a thin line between healthy resilience and emotional suppression. And to be honest, here's the thing that separates it, right? One acknowledges what you're dealing with and what you're going through, whereas the other one doesn't. So when we talk about healthy resilience, it is just your ability to acknowledge and process what you've experienced, but also how do you recover from that, right? How do you overcome it? Whereas with emotional suppression, you're thinking about it, whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, you're forcing those feelings, you're forcing those emotions, and you're not even giving yourself time to process it, right? And so you're
Mm.
suppressing it, you're holding it back, you're withstanding it. And so thinking about that, man, it takes me back to a recent webinar in which they were talking to some brothers, similar subject, talking around mental health and just talking about life and talking about our youth. And this brother, I forgot his name, but his background was in sports and sports psychology and research. But he brought up this interesting term where he talked about instructional pressure. And
Mm.
this was a phrase that was termed to where it kind of describes how really ideally this is something that coaches or even parents may even do, or guardians, to where you're intentionally putting individuals, your players, your staff, your community, putting them in these pressure cooker situations, even though what the outcome is going to be, but you want to see how they do it, right? How they respond to it. All right, we got 20 seconds on the clock. I'm giving you this play. Let me see if y'all can run this play to perfection and score, and we win the game. And so the idea is that by creating these instances of pressure, that helps to build resiliency, that helps to build familiarity with the environment and the context of that. And so that's kind of like what healthy resilience is your ability to be able to walk into those situations. And you think about the different types of work environments we all go into, right? You have some people who are walking into environments that are a little more hostile, that are a little more high intense and late hours and stressful on the body and things like that. They're equipped a certain way to handle that. Whereas if you put the average individual into it, they will fold under that pressure. So there's some resiliency built in that. But at the same token, with that emotional suppression, people can also develop a bad habit or bad practice of just kind of suppressing those emotions when they go through things. They just bottle it up. They don't say anything about it. They don't acknowledge it. And then all of a sudden, eventually some trauma or something occurs, and then you just get these explosive reactions. There you go. As a result of them bottling it in, holding it in, not expressing with anyone, not talking with anyone, consoling with anyone, counseling, whatever that may be. So that's why I say when we talk about those two terms, it's a thin line between it, because although one is defined as strengthening you, in the same token, going through something like that in the long term, it can cause harm. It can have a negative impact on you. But those are the key differences between resiliency and suppression, where one is being acknowledged, the other one is being intentionally pushed away without being properly processed.
I've got a question related to this resiliency piece because I was watching. I'm a sci-fi junkie, and so one of my shows that I'm watching right now is Starfleet Academy. Right.
Okay. Okay.
And in this show, they've got a sister who is essentially an AI. She's from some far off galaxy where they just exist as beams of light. And so they
Right.
built her, and she's an AI. They had in the previous episode this really bad situation. This whole group of cadets, they almost all died. And so they're all dealing with the trauma of that incident. And then in this latest episode, the sister basically was dying because her AI body, her processors couldn't process and deal with all of the trauma. And what they concluded, they took her back to where her makers were and all of that. And what they concluded was that she never developed resiliency because She grew up in another kind of plane of existence. They talked about the fact that now they thrust her in with these humans and all of what's going on. And the point that they made was that humans learn resiliency as children. That's when we do it most effectively. People who are able to most effectively deal with their traumas and things like that is because when they were children, they developed resiliency properly. When they were
Yeah.
young, their parents or their caregivers or whoever let them deal with this, or didn't hide them from things, didn't shield them from it. When a relative died, they explained to them what it was. They didn't hide it from them. When their dog died, they didn't say they sent it off to the farm, right? You're not going to see him anymore. They gave them these truths and let them deal with it and process it, and were there to support them so that they didn't beat them down permanently. And so the end of that episode, they had to basically take her through 17 years of living in a 3-day period so that she could grow up again. That's how they healed her. Another AI raised her like a child, from a child to an adult, and let her deal with life. So, but this whole notion is, the whole point was resiliency. We develop it best when we're young.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that we're talking about this age group here, right? 16 to 29. That's where this growth is really exploding in terms of suicides. That means that this group is really been ill prepared to deal with all of these things that we're talking about. The social media, the rising hate over the last decade, right? We could tie some of that, well, a lot of that to your boy up there on Pennsylvania, right? Just the vitriol, the hatred, the anger, the growth of all of that we're seeing in the society. And apparently this group of young people really isn't being properly supported to develop their resilience, to deal with some of this.
Yeah.
That's
real.
Great observation there, Rick, as well. And it actually comes into to frame our next kind of topic, which is identity. And you bringing that up, is that, do they have an identity? Are they still trying to figure out what that identity is for them? And that article that you were talking about earlier, it talked about that as being part of one of the concerns that comes up, and is that lack of belonging. Again, we're social media. They don't know how to communicate with each other except for through a text or through an IM or through something of that nature, instead of just face to face having conversations about what's going on. Lack of identity. Who are they? We're in a society now where we see a lot of, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I want to be identified as. I don't know what that looks like for me. So that piece of that is also there, because others may not quite understand. Their family may not quite understand what that means and why they're having that difficulty. And
Who's
then that lack of,
influencing now?
well, exactly. I think
you guys influenced me. You were my peers. We were around each
we
other
were
in high
around.
school. We
were
were
connecting.
dealing with each other, connecting, communicating, doing all of those things.
Now,
and so
now with social media influencers.
Right.
It's the ones
And
with
they could be
the
AI
fake blue
now,
check
right?
marks. Listen,
Right.
you got AI actors and actresses being signed deals now. So there's
artists,
nothing off the
singers,
table
you
anymore.
know.
Keon, one of the this is kind of in the line of what John was raising. Does the data tell us, or what does the data tell us about, since we sort of framed it initially about suicide in young folks, is there data that tells us certain predictive things about those who commit suicide, like things that we should be looking for? Or does the data, I imagine there's data around suicide, particularly around certain demographics. And if that's the case, what does that data tell us about sort of predicting or anticipating people who sort of demonstrate suicidal tendencies or something? I think that's kind of the question I'm asking.
No, great.
That
That's
makes
an
sense.
excellent question, and it's a fair one, and it's one that we're still trying to figure it out. And what I mean is that with suicide, it's so complex, right? There's so many factors, there's so many things that come into play that we just don't know. And I think one of the things that, and especially in programming and things that we lead through AFSP, through other organizations like NAMI and Mental Health America's, MHA, things of that nature, there's this guilt that often hits the families and friends and loved ones and colleagues who lose someone to suicide because of that very thing you asked about, right? How did I miss it? What was the sign? What was the thing? How to, and oftentimes you would have never known, even if you would have paid attention to every text message, every email, there's nothing that could have remotely told you on this day, in this hour, in this minute, that someone was going to think about taking their lives. You just never know. It's so unpredictable. But what
Yeah.
we are seeing now is that you're seeing organizations, you're seeing groups. One group in particular, I can't recall the name. I want to say it's something like the Veterans Black Box Initiative, something along those lines. But what they're doing now is, for example, if a veteran takes his life, they are reaching out to families who have been impacted by that. If they have any type of devices, cell phones, tablets, computers, PCs, you name it, they're requesting access to it to see if maybe there was something in their text, something in their email, something in their phone call, something that could have kind of give off this alert, so that in the event we will have some sort of technological tool that will say, hey, what's
Positive use for AI.
there you go,
Right.
right?
Aggregating data and trying to find
There you
some
go.
connection.
Aggregating and disaggregating the data in a way so that if certain words or certain triggers come up, then there's an alert that comes up to say, hey, you might want to check on this, you might want to check on this individual. So that's where the technology and the research is going now, in that they're trying to look at previous phone usage, emails, text messages, things of that nature, or even just asking questions, right? And doing informant interviews where they say, hey, did such and such do something that was just abnormal to you? Is this an upbeat person, or all of a sudden they just their mood is down, or they wanted to sell all their stuff one day, they wanted to give away all of their shoes and their memorabilia that meant everything to them? Maybe there was some signs, maybe there was something there, but you just never know. It's just extremely complex, but we're trying to become more diligent in equipping people with the tools and trainings so that if anything seems odd, if someone is saying something on social media, if someone is just posting something out there that just makes you go, wait a minute, something just doesn't feel right, to lean in on that emotion and go, hey, bro, you all right? I saw you post on Instagram. I saw you post on Facebook. I just want to make sure you were good. And sometimes just that quick message could be the difference between someone being here now and not being here tomorrow.
Yeah, I've had that experience. And what you were saying earlier had me thinking just for a moment about, it doesn't equate perfectly, but I'm a university dean, and one of the things that we struggle with, and this is a concern for most universities, if not all, is students leaving without really telling us why, right? Some students, when life is happening, they seek out help, right? They come talk to somebody at the university, and that's the thing that we're always trying to get them to do. Come talk to us, let us know what's going on, talk to one of your faculty members, talk to your advisor, when this or that. But a good chunk of students just leave. They don't say anything, right? They just disappear. They just go ghost. They don't say anything. They might come back a year later. They might never come back. But I'd say in more than 50% of the cases, we have no clue why. We just, all we can do is record that life happened, right? Something happened. Or sometimes they'll tell us kind of generically that they're having money problems, or they're telling us that they're having family problems, or they're having other personal problems. But the vast majority don't tell us anything.
Interesting.
And that's what happens in a lot of suicide cases. They don't say anything. And so I just found really interesting what you were saying about some of
we're
these.
not hearing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they'll say or the examples that we're missing, because because we can't aggregate the data like AI might do at some point in the future. How am I going to make these 5 or 6 connections that
Right.
And especially a lay person, a regular, everyday, average person living at home, and then this is happening with one of their family members.
Yeah.
Keon might have a little more insight into it because of his work and because of over time his expertise has developed. And so he's come across a number of these different individual signs and might see in a situation, hey, this person is exhibiting 5 or 6 of the markers that I've seen in some of the research. But the rest of us haven't seen that. The rest of us are just living life, and we're just thinking that so-and-so has been tripping a little lately, but they'll be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I realizing the potential of that being more.
Right. And we get to this a little bit later on as well, because it's a great conversation. There's some training that can be done. There's some training that we call QPR training, just like CPR, but it's QPR for suicide awareness and prevention. QPR stands for question, persuade, and refer.
Yeah.
And it's a program. It's a program that folks can get QPR certified in. in order to be able to try to help recognize it. But we can come back to that. But I wanted to give an example, and Keon, you might remember this one, and unfortunately, it's close to home for us as well. But I don't know if you remember Miss USA 2019,
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
black
Yes.
female who unfortunately
Yes.
passed away by way of suicide. And it was, at the time, folks were like, "Hey, what's going on? This was
Mm-hmm.
Miss North Carolina. This was Miss
She's
USA."
perfect, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. She's a civil litigation attorney, and she was a correspondent on a TV show, and all of this. Her
Chesley.
life had to be
Chesley Chris.
perfect. Yes, yes, yes. And
Yep.
unfortunately, she took her life at the age of 30. And it just again speaks to just what was said, is that, was it not seen? Did we
Mm-hmm.
just not want to see it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think some of that is that as well, because you're
Yeah,
like,
I
nah, she
agree.
can't be going through trouble.
Yeah.
Shoot, her life was
Yeah.
perfect. She got the world. What
Listen,
can she be?
and Brother Card, her mother spoke to that, right? At the
Yes,
very ceremony that I was
yes.
fortunate enough to win an award at, her mother, April Simpkins,
Hmm.
was the keynote address.
Mm.
And she
Hmm.
spoke about this very thing. It's like, listen, this was my daughter. We talk
Mm.
every day. We call, we text, we send each other messages. I watched my daughter travel the world and have
Hmm.
access to things one would even dream about. You could even fathom. And even I couldn't have told you, looking back on those moments, there was nothing that would have remotely told me that I would be here having this conversation with you a couple of years later
Right,
because of what she was experiencing, what she was dealing with internally. And it goes back
right,
to Rick's point about the communication and whatever that factor may be, whether it's trust or the stigma or the shame that may come out of that conversation if I truly and genuinely reveal what's my why as
right.
to why I need to drop out or need to take a break.
Mhm.
But you just never know. But it's just one of those things that even for someone, like we said, like Chesley, who had the entire world in the palm of her hands, you just never know, right? When you think about, you know, the actors and the athletes, now the recent
Hmm.
rash of pro ball players who are taking their lives, and we're waking up in the morning like, man, this brother was 24, 25 years old, just scored a touchdown the night before, and now all of a sudden he's no longer here with us. Like, there's a lot, and it is extremely complex. And going back to, Brother Card's point, our hope is that by implementing these tools and these programs and these trainings, our goal is to equip ourselves the best way we possibly can to try to catch these things, or at least give ourselves some of those instincts to
Some
know
tools.
the tools, something just doesn't feel right.
Right,
And let me at least try
right.
and do what I can and, provide some support.
Yeah. I think what we see sometimes is, or at least question, I won't say we see it because I don't think we do see it, but maybe we can question, do they feel like they have a purpose? Some of this was
Yeah.
spoken to in the article as well, and it made me think about that book. I don't know if you guys read it or know of it, but The Purpose Driven Life, that
Mm.
was
Oh,
written by Rick Warren at the time, and talked about the 5 levels of what that means and everything. But purpose, it's so strong. I think we all feel like, why are we here? What am I doing? What am I giving to this society and to this world? And I think if folks, especially young folks, are struggling with what that means because they don't know now what to do with the rest of their life because they can't figure out what their purpose is, and
hmm
unfortunately may bring about those thoughts of ending it as well.
Yeah.
We talked about
Well,
purpose in the episode we did a while
yeah,
back when we were talking about
yep,
loneliness. That was
yep,
one of the things
Mm.
we
yep,
talked a lot
Mm.
about as an antidote to
yep.
loneliness was finding and developing that purpose.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I am wondering, hopefully I don't sound overtly political here, but I am wondering if suicide, mental health challenges, issues are something that are unique to modern life or modern American life, sort of like
Hmm.
panning out. How does sort of the demographic that we're talking about, or even just Americans writ large, and mental health, suicide, all of the things on the paradigm, how that relates to sort of normal human behavior, or like how does it
Yeah.
is how much variation is it relative to the rest of the world, right? Is there
Yeah.
Mm,
something
Right.
about modern American life,
Yeah.
right? That creates pressures and like makes people more prone to suicide
Oh,
is a
I'm
question that
convinced
I've
of it.
always had.
I'm convinced that America is special in
Yeah.
that wrong way. But
Yeah.
one thing, Greg, as soon as you started talking about that, popped into my head was 1973. 1973, I want to say, is when, as a nation, we decided that we were going to treat mental health differently.
Mm.
Mm.
That's when you started seeing the closure of mental health institutions all over the nation. It was 1973. So essentially, for our entire life, this nation had decided we're just going to act like it doesn't exist.
And just house people and
Mm-hmm. It
And
was
Or
how
not
this
give
to
them
the
a
nation,
place to
pawn.
be. Right.
right? Not give them a place to be. There used to be places to
Right.
be.
well,
Yep.
this is a country that used to give people lobotomies too, right?
Right.
So I feel like
Yeah.
so I just wonder how
Yeah.
much I wonder what the data tells us about
About
that.
other,
Is there
how do we compare
something
to other
about
countries?
modern
That's
American
interesting.
life
Yeah.
that
Yeah. I would say I can't speak on the international dynamics, but what I can say is just from a recent study abroad experience I had with some of my colleagues and other fellow students in the program out at A&T, it was myself, a few of my colleagues from our doctoral studies program, which is primarily based in leadership studies and adult education. And then we joined some other fellow students whose program was in counseling education. And so we traveled to Paris together. Remarkable trip and remarkable opportunity to have some of these very discussions, right? The historical context of our own research interests, but also just kind of looking at the different dynamics of culture and history and perception and all those things. And so going to your point, GK, yes, the world views us in a very compelling lens. And I'll be the first one to tell you it's not the most positive one in the world. And it's primarily stemmed from that guy up on that avenue, right? and to them, their perception is
We're
if
300
as a
million
nation,
fool.
there you go. If as a nation you selected this individual to be your leader,
right. What's wrong? What's wrong?
what's wrong with y'all?
There's a major mental health.
Yeah,
all,
right. You all are picking this. You all selected this. So there's something wrong with
Yeah.
y'all. And
Yep.
then when they see us and we have these conversations, they're like, huh,
you're not crazy.
you
Okay,
got
you
that.
all have
You're
racial
actually
trauma.
extremely intelligent.
Right.
But this is the dynamics, right? But then it also goes
Yep.
back to social media, the
Yeah.
media, the internet, the news, music, and all those
Trauma.
trauma. So
Yep.
if your messaging and if what you keep projecting out to the world is a certain topic or as a certain look or a certain style, the rest of the world is perceiving that as such.
Yep.
So that's why, going back to my man GK point about how we're in the FIFA World Cup, that's why you got these interesting blogs where all of these foreign nations coming in like, wait a minute, this
Right.
what y'all do here? This is how
Right.
much y'all eat? This is what you drink? This is what you
Right.
do?
Yeah.
No
Yep.
wonder.
Yep. Yep.
But
Yeah. You know,
yeah.
I asked that because one of the cats I am most fascinated by since you brought up France in the political context is Franz Fanon, right?
Yeah.
Who, for all his brilliance, most people don't actually realize that he was actually a psychiatrist
Yep.
from the West Indies
Mm-hmm.
who then moved to France and then went to Algeria, which was obviously a colony of France, and he went there on purpose to study Algerian people who had been subjected to French colonialism.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was about how colonialism impacted the psyche and the mental health of the Algerian people and how all these things impacted each other fundamentally because of colonization and economic exploitation.
It's very real.
So that's just a fascinating sort of
Generational
line.
trauma.
And I will say, even
Generation.
from an international perspective, the stigma of mental health and suicide is even worse there because they don't talk about it at all like that. You know, there's not a lot of organizations and nonprofits that's dedicated to the space. So that's something that we have an advantage, but also have an opportunity to develop some real cross-sector partnerships and collaborations to talk about what you're seeing there. What are your practices here? What is keeping your numbers low, even though you don't talk about it much. What are you doing here that maybe we could infuse here as a form of care or resource, whatever
Mhm.
that may be. But until we start intentionally having that kind of dialogue, these are the dynamics we're going to see.
Outstanding conversation, brothers. Outstanding. So I'm gonna move us a little bit though,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
move us to talk about, okay, but we're a group that we're here. We want to give information, but we also want to hopefully give some guidance on some things as best as we can, which is why we bring in folks who have a little bit more info and knowledge on this than we do as well. But what can we do? How can we encourage our parents to be a little bit more, and I hate to say it this way, but engaged in what's going on in our children's lives versus what we want going on in our children's lives? You know what I
Don't
mean?
hate to say it. It's important.
It is. And
Yeah.
then with that, can we talk a little bit about why can't we get our young folks, especially our young black men, to
Hmm.
seek out mental health services?
Yeah, yeah, it's tricky. Brother Carl, you and I, this is the $1 million question. We're always trying to figure out the $1 million riddle. We're always trying to test out, to put out there to see what the response is going to be, to create platforms intentionally to where we have a safe space where our youth, adults, families, you name it, can have these types of conversations without feeling like they're being judged, right? And I
Mhm.
think that's where it ultimately begins is what does safe space looks like? What does it
Yes,
look like to us? We
yes.
we all have our own perception and respective definitions of having a safe space, but each one of us views it and experiences it differently. To some, it may be being in a room full of people who are comfortable with talking and discussing the topic and knowing that, hey, there's going to be a level of discretion here. There's going to be a
Mhm.
level of respect. And when we leave here, we leave it as that, but we also carry those tools with us. To others, it may be a little more intimate. They may prefer maybe three or four or
Mhm.
one or two at most. So I think before we even get to creating those platforms, we
Mhm.
have to be honest enough to ask, hey, what does a safe space look and feel like to you? Then from there, we begin to kind of structure the resources and the things that we need to identify that kind of supports that type of environment and giving one another the tools and the space to have these conversations, to develop resources, and to figure out how do we continue to address these needs.
Mhm. Excellent point, and it's spot on. I think that's something that
Mm-hmm.
we'll all have to continue to develop and have conversation about as well. And I think from the standpoint of mental health services, of course, we've talked about that, the stigma. No one wants to be deemed, oh, he's crazy, oh my goodness, this, that, and the other, or oh my family member is crazy, insane, or whatever. But it's not about that, and that's the part that we have to get through. As I said when
And
we
I don't even
started,
think it's crazy, John. I think
it's
it's
not.
soft. It's
It's well,
soft.
Yeah, it's
I
not.
mean, as
right,
far as the stigma,
right.
most cats aren't avoiding mental health services because they're concerned with being thought of as crazy.
Hmm.
They're being considered. Their fear is vulnerability. Their fear is
Hmm.
appearing weak. I
Hmm.
think more so broken,
Right.
not crazy.
Well,
Well,
I can
and
appreciate
that's
I
that.
one
Go
of
think.
the
ahead.
stigmas in
Yeah,
itself,
yeah,
right? That
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
weakness. I don't
That
want to
is
come
a
off as being
stigma.
weak.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
agree with you on that as well. And I think
yeah.
that comes back to even the bigger topic of men going to the doctor in and of itself, right? We're
Oh
talking about
man.
just a physical
Whew.
checkup, and now we try
Right.
to define this more to mental. But
Look
no, it's
here.
that same thing. It's being
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I don't want to go there, and them tell me I'm not this perfect human being, this
Mhm.
perfect man that I've always thought that I was because something's coming up, and that's where that can play a huge role. And we got to get beyond that stigma as well.
And Dr. Card, I can only imagine the
Oh,
conversations that you've had with patients, especially men and brothers, like, listen, man, come to your annual appointments, check in on this, do that, because I need
right.
you to be here.
Exactly. And I tell them their mental health is just as important as their physical health. And I try to encourage that.
That's because you're a good
Well,
doctor.
I appreciate y'all, brothers. I appreciate y'all, man. It's just
Indeed,
Because
indeed.
most doctors don't do that.
see,
No, they
and
don't.
that's what I and it,
Don't.
man, brother, that's a whole nother conversation.
Mm,
But
Right.
I have folks that come to see me, and when we're done, they're like, ah, nobody's ever talked to me about things like that. And I'm like, well, to me, I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, that's should be
Well,
part of the care that you
and
receiving. But
You
and
just
yeah,
that,
said the magic
that's
word right there.
something. Yeah,
Care.
you care,
It's
and that's
it's a
something
lot
we
of people
talk
that are just getting
about.
checked.
Yep,
yeah,
and that's something we talk about in this leadership development space is mindfulness.
yes,
Is what does that look like as leaders and as those who work in this space, and especially if you working at an institution, I can only imagine what it's like when you're able to have a conversation with a student and you're able to pick their brain and see how they're doing, and they're like, oh man, you care about what I'm doing, and you're a dean, you're supposed to be focusing on this, focusing on that, and now you
Hmm.
able to converse with me about this. So that
hmm
mindfulness is key, and
hmm
and not everyone possesses that skill.
That's a major factor, John, and why some men aren't using, because a lot of men have had doctors not like you, right? I mean, we
Oh,
talk we you
most people haven't.
right, and then when you talk about psychological services, mental health services,
It's a whole nother
that's a
level.
whole nother, and then also the finding it's a lot harder, I think, for a lot of people to find a mental health professional that they're a good fit with, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
right,
yeah,
Or that they
Right.
feel
absolutely,
comfortable with, that they
yeah.
And of
have
course, all of this assumes that you actually have access to any of that.
right,
right,
have access,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
want
That's
access,
that's
right,
another
right,
factor.
right.
Any kind of
It's
healthcare.
right.
Listen, and I tell people this all the time. When it comes to counseling, therapy, focus groups, whatever that dynamic may be, you have to go into it with the mentality like you go in the shop for a vehicle, a home, a car, a outfit. You got
hmm
to try different things. You got to go to
hmm
different places. It is not a
right,
one size fits all.
right.
And going back to GK's point, if you don't have that knowledge or that awareness of where to go,
hmm
because here's the key: not all of it is about whether you have insurance or the money
hmm
or the
Right.
opulence to afford it. It's just which environment to place yourself in that's going to equip you with the tools so that when you walk away, you have purpose, you have tools to support yourself, and that you
hmm
can find that peace and that balance that you need to move forward.
And do you
Otherwise,
have
yeah,
3 or
you're going to
4
keep butting
hours
heads.
on 5 different days to go
Right,
try these 5 different people?
And
And
right,
listen,
do the practical side of that and still
right,
go to work and
right,
still take
We
care of your
make it we
kids or
make it too hard.
make it too
Way too
hard.
many
right,
barriers.
You
Way
would be
too
like I
amazed
said, that's
at
that
how many people.
1973 cutoff. We
Yeah,
don't wanna actually
yeah.
fix people, is what this
Y'all, y'all,
nation
y'all would be
decided.
amazed at how many people don't use their EAP programs at their
Yeah,
hmm
respective jobs.
hmm
yeah.
They don't even think
hmm
about it. They don't
Mhm,
tap into it, and it amazes me that they don't even consider it. And here's the thing:
mm,
I think a lot of them have the stigma or the understanding, or in their minds, that it's only there when there's a crisis,
and
versus
then I think a lot of
utilizing
people
it to
don't
keep
trust
yourself
those
tuned up.
EAP
right,
programs. I think a lot of
right,
people think if I go into that EAP program, it's gonna get back to
Hmm.
some people here at the
right.
job.
At the
There you
job,
go.
right.
There you
And
go.
and and
My
somebody
supervisor.
gonna be talking about me. My
Yeah.
supervisor's gonna lose
Uh-huh.
confidence in me. I'm
Yeah.
gonna end up getting fired or
There
any
you
number of
go.
things.
So it's
hmm
it's a lot.
Now
Yeah,
we set up the programs, but we're not really being effective in how the programs should be used.
There you
Because you're
go.
hmm
absolutely right, Rick. We have these programs in place, but there's that concern of, wait a minute, what if this gets to the next step? How is
Hmm.
that going to
hmm
affect me and my job and my role and my
Right.
family and my friends and all of that as well? And we haven't done good in that aspect of making it, what did we say earlier? Safe space. All of
I'll
that
be all right.
should be
You know what?
area safe
I'll be all
space.
right because I gotta keep my job. I gotta
Yep.
keep paying these bills. So and so is in her. She's getting ready to go to college. I need to be able to do this or that.
hmm
So I just suck it up and I'll be all right. Right.
hmm
Yep.
That's it right there.
That's the mentality
That's
right
it.
Sucking
there.
it up don't fix nothing.
Right. And for our folks out there, no, we are not saying that the answer is you just got to go get therapy. That's not
Right.
what we're saying with this.
No.
We're just saying that that's an avenue that can definitely be helpful because your mental health affects you in so many ways, and sometimes we
Yeah.
need a professional to help guide us through that phase as well. So
Expertise matters.
exactly, exactly. So seeing your therapist, if you your faith, your church,
I was about to
your
say, talk to your
fraternity,
pastor.
sorority,
Talk to you.
right? Your friends. All of
Mm-hmm.
those are avenues of support, and hopefully through our conversations that we've had and having now, we're going to feel a little bit more open about, well, hey, what did you say, Keon? Hey, how you doing? Nah,
Yeah.
don't tell me that I'm fine. Yeah, nah.
No, no.
How you doing?
How are
What's
you doing?
going on? Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Yep. And I think you're raising it, John. As I understand it, nobody really gets through all of this alone, right?
Right.
That
Uh-huh.
doesn't
Right.
matter what kind of institution or group of people or person, we all to lean on me, right?
Right.
We all need
Yeah,
somebody to lean on,
Right.
yeah.
and we shouldn't feel bad about
No,
that.
not
And
at all.
feel free to do it. Find it.
Hmm.
Oh, this is another that American things we were talking about specific to America, right? Is this notion of rugged individualism.
Rugged.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
stupid. That's stupid
Boots in the
mess.
ground.
It's
You
just
got to
Boots,
dig
lying,
in.
just
pull
Right.
yourself
lying to
up by your
millions of people for
bootstraps.
hundreds of years.
Knock it
Exactly.
If
off.
you need some help, don't hesitate to ask somebody.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And as primary care providers, this is important because as you guys have mentioned and said, we have to be better about asking the question. Oh, there's this new thing. It's not even new actually, but there's a depression questionnaire that's asked of patients when they show up for
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
visits.
my doctors do that every time now. I forget when that started. It was a couple years ago, it seems like,
Right. It
when
was
they
about a
started
few
doing that.
years
But
ago
now,
when that happened.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
Yeah,
policy.
yeah. Right after
Right.
COVID.
yeah,
It's policy. But
it's
Yeah.
when
policy.
that first came out, oh my gosh, we had
Oh, I know you was
so
getting people
much
snapping at you, weren't they?
Pushback.
resistance, pushback,
Why you asking me
walls.
that?
Right. Not even from the patient, from the provider, because they didn't feel
Right.
comfortable with what that response might be. And
But
that
Hmm.
was
but that's
something
the
that
part
opened
that
up
is
eyes.
so amazing to me is that we
Mhm.
can ask some of the most
Right.
out
Right.
the box physical questions during an
Right.
examination. Hey, does this
Right.
tingle or did
Right.
this appear to fall off? But if
Right.
I ask you something about your mind,
Right.
all alarms go off.
All alarms
Well,
go off. I don't know
well,
what to do.
well, it's a funny thing because accountants now, auditors
Hmm.
who
Mm,
like audit books all the time. My line of work, we're like heavily audited all the
Hmm.
time around like spending. And so
Hmm.
auditors ask people stuff like, so how you
Hmm.
doing? Have you had any serious financial problems or like struggles in your family? Right? Like, with the obviously implication
Of
being like
course.
if you have, you might not be the best steward of resources,
Right.
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Right.
yeah, and
Imagine like your
fraud.
mental health
Yeah.
is a
Right.
kind of resource, right? So
Hmm.
I think that's a way in which I think, like, in terms of what we can do more holistically, like, I think we can demand from policymakers, right, that
Hmm.
this kind of stuff be sort of a standard thing that various industries engage in that will help the broader culture, to my mind. Because we don't talk about it. We just say, is there a mental health clinic? Well, policy should require that we do much more than that
Hmm.
for society.
You
Then
said something right there, brother. Policy should require that. And
Hmm.
here's the
yeah,
thing, it requires having leaders who are understanding of that to be able to push that through and write it and develop it so that it can exist. But if they're not
Derive the
mindful
political
of it,
desire. Yeah.
Right.
it's got to be their political desire.
The
Right.
same question was
yeah.
being
Spot on.
bandied about today. I was watching something. They were talking about the future of AI and the direction that we're headed in, and whether or not we have the political courage to actually do something, or are we going to sit back and let these tech companies actually, in a couple decades, have us living in the matrix? It's about political courage. And then also right now, none of our representatives actually care. So we got to get a
No.
whole new group of people in. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's that political will to do the things that
And
actually
it's up to
benefit.
us to drive it.
Yeah, we
It's
Yeah.
have
up
to
to the
force that.
regular people to drive it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, brother. So what do we need to know? What do families need to know? How do they start to maybe identify some things in our youth that might be going on? I know we mentioned that there may not be anything, but typically in our youth, there may be some things, and some things might be they're isolating themselves more. They're not connecting. They're not getting on their video game like they used to, or the grades are suffering, or their weight's changing. So there are maybe some things that can be looked at to help give
Shifts in
some
behavior,
idea. Right,
Yeah,
shift in
shifts in
behavior,
personality,
yeah,
all
just
of
kind of
those
radical
things.
changes.
yeah,
What do you guys
yeah.
think? What do you think? Yeah.
I think in a way, especially for us as parents and, now with the evolution of this younger generation, is that we're going to have to find our own unique ways of engaging one another and learning about what these new trends are. So, for example, my home chapter, Tau Omega chapter out of
Mhm,
Greensboro, North Carolina, we had a father's brunch
mhm,
last year, which I had a chance to speak at. And so one of the things that I wanted to really infiltrate and highlight in my presentation was to let these fathers know what were some of the newest trends that was going on right now in social media and in schools and so forth. And I just remember talking about the different TikTok challenges and the music and things of that nature. And you just saw these deer in the headlight moments like, wait a minute, what? Like this is going on. But it kind of opened my eyes to it, like, man, what? As much as we have these different avenues and these platforms for our youth to engage in these things and to do these different challenges, like we need a space for the adults to really learn and to understand and figure out, hey, this is what's going on, right?
mhm,
This is what's trending right now.
mhm.
So I think we're going to have to really be intentional on either developing social media pages or developing these opportunities for parents to become more informed about what's happening now. And I think a lot of times we get so embedded in just being the parent, being the role model, being the disciplinarians, and not
Mhm.
educating ourselves in this new generation literacy. And I just
Right.
Think
made that
about how
term up.
little our
We got
parents
mental health
knew.
literacy, we got financial. We need this next gen literacy to figure out what is going on and what they're
Think
doing.
about how little our parents knew of what we were doing on the day to day,
Right.
and we didn't
Had
have
no clue.
technology.
Right.
No
We,
clue.
we didn't have
Right.
technology, but we were just out in the
Right.
streets, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But still,
Very true, Rick, and how that's changed so much where
Yeah.
social media, gaming, all this stuff, I have to say, we have to be intentional to say, hey, you, I better have access to your account
You got to
and
and
know.
you
and
better
whatever
utilize
other
all the
accounts you think you
technology.
have
Right.
secret as well, right? Because
Right.
that's
They're
where they
they're
get
ghost
caught.
accounts, they're burners accounts. Oh,
All
I
of that.
they're in third grade. They're in third grade with burner
right.
accounts.
What you need a burner
Trying
account?
to
You in
hide.
third grade.
Right.
Exactly.
What are you searching for in third grade that is going to require you to have an adult account?
Right,
Hmm.
exactly. Exactly. So,
The third grader don't know.
right,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
They don't know
Shoot.
why. They just doing it because one of their friends told them to.
Right,
There you go.
exactly. Or their
Right.
And it
older
goes
sibling
back to the
All
point.
right.
is
Or their
doing
older
it.
Older
sibling.
Right, which
sibling.
is
There you go.
That's a major.
That's what sponges do. They just
Yep.
Yeah, because that's what's popular right now. So I'm gonna do it.
yeah. So, Keon, what do you think? What are maybe a couple of suggestions you would say if there's someone out there and they're like, man, kind of worried. I don't know how to approach this, or what should they avoid saying, that might trigger something in a worse direction. Do you have any
Yeah,
thoughts or any points on that?
yeah. The most immediate and the most important thing I want to convey to our audience and to anyone listening to us on this topic is that by sparking a conversation around mental health or suicide or things or trauma, any things of that nature, I want you to understand that there's a false narrative that by you doing that, you're going to become a trigger for someone to want to take their lives. That is the biggest misconception and miscommunication about having those hard conversations is that if I bring this topic up, then I'm going to be the cause or the catalyst that leads to that. And so, number one, overcome that. But number two, and it's something that our brother Rick brought up earlier, is really getting into active listening. Don't go into the conversation
Mm,
expecting to be the resolution, but just
mm,
listen, hear them out, hear what the hell they have to say, right? Because it's like our man Andre 3000. I'm from the South. We got something to say, so let them
Right.
say what they got to say. Let them speak their mind, process it, and then thirdly, give grace. Give grace to whoever you're speaking with, but most importantly, give grace to yourself. Because here's the thing, right? And Dr. Carr will tell you, we talk about this all the time. It's one thing when you put yourself in a situation and you have these conversations with someone, but also you're putting yourself in a dynamic where you're carrying the weight of that trauma on you as well because they shared it with you. So you and yourself need to know your limitations as well. That if you open up this book,
Right.
Yep.
be prepared that some of these chapters might be a little more graphic than others.
Right.
And if
Yeah.
it gets to a point where it's a little, not necessarily extreme, but a little outside of your scope of practice or outside of your expertise or really your comfort level, then it is on you to be comfortable enough to say, hey, we can discuss this, but if we go in this, then I want to make sure that I refer you or that you speak with someone who has a background in this and who can give you the support that you need. But those are the three key things I would share with those is that don't be impacted by that myth that by saying or having a conversation and you're going to be a catalyst to someone's mental health or potential suicide. Number two, make sure that you're putting yourself in a safe space and understanding and recognizing that, hey, you're there to listen and not to be the solution. But then lastly, know your capabilities and know your limitations. Understand that not all conversations are going to be equal. There are going to be some things that's going to come up that may be a little outside of what you're comfortable with. Be comfortable enough to acknowledge that and recognize if or whenever it gets to that point.
No, that right there just will hopefully provide some hope for people now that they have an avenue to work toward. You're right, and it's so hard, especially when it comes to your kids. Try not to judge. Try not to judge. If they're
Yeah.
ready to open up to you, sometimes it's the hardest thing is to just be an active listener, like you said, and just
Yeah.
allow them to be able to pour what's going on in them out for you to be able to receive it. It can be very hard. It can be very difficult. It could be
Oh, yeah.
something that you just may have a hard time trying to deal with, but please try not to judge on that as well. And
Yeah.
sometimes you have to take that embrace and take a moment for yourself as well to just be able to even process some of that as well.
You just said something, man, that's so profound and simple. But think about you as parents. Think about when you were because John, your children are adults. Greg, you span the spectrum in age. So what that means is really important here. How have you reacted to your children in different situations? I've seen you both because right, I've been around you when you've had, when your kid has done or said, and I just want you to think for a moment about facial reactions that you've had, right? And
Yeah.
you've had the same facial reaction more than once with your child about certain situations, right? And in your head, you might be thinking, "See, knucklehead," or something like that, or
Yeah.
something much worse, or something much nicer. But
Yeah.
your kid's used to seeing that, and they know what that facial expression means, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're having that conversation that you were talking about, John, and you were talking about not judging, it's important that you're not judging is your body expression as well as your mouth. You're saying the right things or not saying anything because you're listening, but while you're listening, you got to get that poker face on. You can't have that normal reaction that, see, you're just stupid, or those kind of things that might be back there because this is your kid and you've been with them their whole lives and you know when they do stupid knucklehead stuff, but this might not be stupid knucklehead stuff. So you got to really kind of control that moment so that they don't lose the trust, so they don't feel like this is no longer safe, and they don't come to you, or
And that right
they
there,
hold the
Rick,
stuff back.
that right there is a brilliant example of that thin line between healthy resilience and emotional suppression. To where it's like, okay, is this going to be that moment where I go through this, I acknowledge it, in what's happening. I process it. I got my poker face. Or do I suppress the disappointment or the anger that I have in that moment and kind of
Yeah.
bottle it up until all of a
Yeah.
sudden little knucklehead does it again. Now I done had an explosive angry dad moment. Now I done created a whole nother dynamic. So yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. It's a fine balance
It is.
between the way
And
we
no
do
one's
that. And
perfect. No one's
no,
perfect out there,
no,
okay?
no.
We have
Trust.
experienced it,
Trust.
and we've been on both sides of those spectrums as well. And if the love is still there, it comes out, it comes through.
This is
And
on the job training.
exactly,
Man.
exactly,
Ain't no
exactly,
manuals.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
Well,
So,
we're creating one. We're creating the introduction to one. All of
Yeah.
these conversations. If there's
Yeah,
enough of
absolutely.
these conversations going on, and that's what we were talking about earlier, right? Is by destroying the stigma, by getting people a little more comfortable with the reality that we all need to be talking about these things. We're all impacted by it, right? So we can eventually create that manual. We can eventually create some best practices that we can share everywhere. And through organizations like the one that Keon's a part of, is trying to develop these things that can spread out and create essentially that virtual manual. But
Yep.
Keon, I'm going to ask you if for those young black men who are watching, because when I look at all of our stats, our biggest demographic is an age group from 44 to 65, right? Because the three of us are, in our upper 50. So the reality is that the people who are more likely to listen to this aren't the young men. They're the family members and friends of the young men. And so my original question was going to be for the young black man watching this episode right now is alone and feels invisible, what would you tell him directly? So kind of give me both. What would you tell that person, that young black man directly? He's looking at the screen right now and you're talking to him. What would you say to him? And then also, what would you say to his family or friend
Yeah.
that they can say to him? You know what I'm saying?
To my brother that's listening now, I will first tell him immediately that he's not alone, right? And that you are not dealing with this by yourself. Masculinity is not a monolith. It is not the same across the board. It is not taught the same way. It is not developed the same way. But understand that as we navigate life is complex. Know that you have brothers out here who have valuable insights and wisdom that are willing to share with you. But I want to encourage you to seek it out, not force you to do it. You do it in your own time, do it in your own space. But I will tell that brother that he is a king, that he is worthwhile, and that he is worth living, that his life has purpose. And that if there's ever a time when he's in need, that he has a listening ear and an open heart, whether it's myself or my respective organizational affiliations, to tap into, to just share it and just open up, however that may be, whether it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or an hour, that he's not alone in this and that he has support. And to his family, to his friends, to his colleagues, his cousins, relatives, fraternal brothers, wherever it may be, I will tell them the exact same thing, is to remind him of his purpose, to remind him of his gift and that he is a king and that he has resources available to him. But most importantly, something we were already previously discussed about, give him grace. Let him learn, let him go through his respective trials. Don't judge him if he didn't get it right on the first try or even the 10th try. But acknowledge the fact that he is trying and that he is putting forth the best effort that he possibly can. And any given opportunity you get a chance to uplift him, do so and do it exponentially. And I think by doing that and taking that approach, we're putting our brother in a better space and on a better pathway to be successful, but to most importantly thrive.
man,
Thank you.
outstanding, outstanding,
Mhm.
Yes,
outstanding.
sir. Yes, sir.
As brothers, as we get ready to kind of wrap this episode up, I want us to kind of recap, but we're going to recap it in a way where I'm going to ask you a few questions, Keon, and if you don't mind, just a quick kind of sentence, as to
Oh,
what
lightning
your
round.
response would
Lightning
be. It's what we're
round.
going to
Yeah,
call a
love it,
little
love it.
lightning round to kind of bring some things back.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So, what is, in your thoughts, the biggest misconception about suicide?
Yeah, right now, the biggest misconception is two things is that by having a conversation about it, that you can be a catalyst to someone's mental health in a negative way. And then the second big misconception is that when people are looking at statistics, they naturally assume that that speaks for the entire collective, when in actuality, it's just giving you a summation of a certain time period, a certain frame. And so you have to make sure that you dig a little bit deeper into the data and not just take it for just that for what it is.
Outstanding. One thing you think parents should stop saying.
One thing I think parents should most definitely stop saying is that they should refrain from the comparative trait, or refrain from the statement that says, I wish you were more like dot
Mhm,
dot dot.
mhm,
I think you should accept and embrace the uniqueness of your respective child, that
mhm,
individual, their personality, and uplift it and encourage it instead of trying to force them to be more like their elder
mhm.
sibling or someone outside of the family.
Oh, John, can I throw one out there from a
Sure.
layman's perspective? Man, I'm just thinking parents should stop telling their kids they're perfect.
Mm,
Oh my God.
yes.
Yes, sir.
Quit lying to your kids and telling them that they can't do anything wrong, or that they're
Oh
so
yeah.
wonderful
Oh
and
yeah.
incredible. Because when life
Huge
slaps them
mistake.
upside the head,
Right,
that's when they start to have problems. Is
right.
because they thought that they were all of this and that, and life told them,
Yeah.
no, you just regular. Let your
Mhm,
kids be regular, because regular is
mhm.
exceptionally beautiful
Right.
on
It
the
is.
everyday.
Exactly. A
You
very
are a
good point,
human.
Rick. Very good point. Very good point. All right. One thing friends should start doing.
Mm, friends should start giving each other more grace.
Mm,
I don't think friends do it enough. I don't think they express it enough. I don't think they demonstrate it enough. And so the biggest piece of advice I would tell friends is to give each other more grace, allow one another to navigate this life and its complexity. Don't judge, and
mhm,
whatever that dynamic may be, enable that individual to process it, to go through it before we run out here and just assume and just ping it as such. But give one another grace.
I'm going to add to this one and just say, and my brothers know this, don't be afraid to say I love you. I think as
Yeah,
men, that's
yeah.
something that we may struggle with, but don't be afraid to say I love you. And when you see them, give them a hug. You know what I'm saying? I think that can go a long way as well.
Absolutely.
All right. What things schools should
Oh
change?
man, listen. I think schools have got to become, and not only the schools, but the districts and the leadership from the superintendents on down, they have got to become more open and more flexible to not only mental health trainings and resiliency trainings, but also finding ways of infusing these kind of tools into their leadership development frameworks, right? Because here's the thing, you are the individuals who spend the most time and have the most exposure to our
Mhm.
youth. So you are going to have to become the ones even better equipped with the tools to recognize when these signs and symptoms are showing up. So when we're trying to bring trainings to your campuses and say, hey, let's have this conversation, it shouldn't be such a stringent process to just at least bring it to your doorsteps to say, hey, how can we bring this to your school so your educators and your faculty, your coaches, so forth, can be better equipped to support our youth, especially when it comes to mental health.
Good. Very
They make
good.
it extremely difficult, and it shouldn't be.
Mhm. And we know that the church is something that's a huge influence in our
Mhm.
lives, especially Black African American. What's one thing you feel that churches should change?
I think churches should, and this is tough, because we know when it comes to that faith talk, this can get very personal. It can go there, right? It can escalate into something. But I would encourage churches to really find innovative ways to establish greater collaborative partnerships with outside organizations. And what I mean by that is, local nonprofits, public health agencies, institutions, things of that nature, to have conversations around not only just mental health, but other tools and things in which we know a lot of our faith is embedded into. Because here's the thing, I think a lot of times in church, people can put the church leadership and key members and just the congregation on a pedestal and can put them in a space where they feel like they can do no wrong, when in actuality, we're all humans and we're all liable to make mistakes and liable to fall short of the grace and God's eyesight. But I would encourage them to continue to have these relationships, establish these collaborations, bring resources to their congregations, and really tap in with their members to see what additional resources that they could bring to them
Exactly.
outside of the usual Bible studies and trainings and things of that nature,
Right.
so that it becomes more total faith and wellness versus just strictly the faith walk. Because,
Right.
like you said, people are not only just coming there to equip themselves spiritually, but they're bringing their entire selves into these churches. And so we need to make sure that our churches and institutions are equipped to handle that.
And be open to
Be
that
open.
as
Yeah,
well, because that's highly important.
absolutely.
And one last question is one thing employers should change.
So here's what I think employers should do. I think one of the things employers should look into is potentially consider other alternatives outside of EAP, right? The Employee Assistance Program. Because we spoke about this earlier, in that a lot of faculty members are not utilizing it, or staff members are not utilizing it because of the fear or the stigma, and they think that because if I share and I open myself up to this, that this could affect my employment,
Right.
future, and so forth, right? So what employers are going to have to be doing is they're going to have to be open and creative to other avenues of creating those safe spaces for their staff members to be able to convene, whatever that may be, whether it's via focus groups, something
Right.
virtually, something remote, whatever that may be, and not just say, hey, this is your only outlet for mental health and psychological support. You
Right.
should provide all options, right? Because here's the thing, when you open up that benefits packet, you see a list of options for everything: insurance, dental, medical. Hey, you can get tickets to Carowinds, or you can go tickets to the movies, you can go to the concerts. But then we get the mental health, I only see one option. Why is that? For something as complex and as difficult as this can be, there should be a just an entire menu of options for your staff and your employees to select from, because you want them to be the best that they can possibly be when they walk in and outside of that office.
I totally agree. At GK, again, he's a union president for a region that focuses on healthcare workers. I would say to you, GK, and I'm not sure if you may already be doing this in the work that you do, but to have that as as you advocate for your workers, to make sure that these employers are providing that kind of opportunity and space for our workers, for our employees.
Yeah, I think what we decided to do was not wait for them to do it and to do it ourselves. And it's a growing thing, and we are constantly surprised. Actually, I should say not surprised. It is always a revelation when we bring it up that we are offering those kind of services to our members as an organization, how many of our members are excited by it and participate in it and want to know more about it, because it was just kind of on a lark, just accidental almost, sort of saying, we can do this. We have some resources and we think folks might be interested in it. We had no data to show that people might be interested in it, but just being in the world, experiencing COVID and all of the things that came from that, the trauma of like taking care of people one day and they're gone the next, or your colleague working right next to you and they're gone. You saw, just being a human being, that people were having issues. And so we just kind of took it upon ourselves, and it's kind of
You
taken off
created a safe
in a way
space.
we hadn't
Right.
anticipated.
You
You
created a
did.
safer space
Yep.
than employers from what
Right.
we've been talking about
Yep.
with
Yep.
EAP and the fears
Yeah.
and concerns.
Yep.
Yeah, you
Right.
created a
Yep.
safer
Yep.
space.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's huge.
Nah, we have to be more transparent about that need, that help, and we have to be able to create those safe spaces. So I appreciate that lightning round, Brother Keon. Closing thoughts, my brothers. Greg, you have a closing thought? Anything on your mind, brother? I know we talked a lot.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
well, I guess I would just say thank you, brother Keon. The path to the future of the country is down there through Mecklenburg County. That's an inside joke. I really appreciate you taking your time, offering your expertise. I think we could talk about this subject in so many ways. Our initial frame was important, but I think that as we got into it, so many different directions it could go. I'm hoping that it sparks something in our audience. But to me, ultimately, it's like just broaching the subject and forcing people to just take a moment to think and express the concerns around it. But a lot of these things need a policy solution. And I think as a country, we should start demanding that our elected leaders offer some of those policy solutions. But great conversation as always. And again, thank you, Keon.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I wanted to say, you got to remember that mental illness is not a weakness. It's just something that's going on that affects us, and we have to be able to be open about what that is so that we can help identify it and help work through. We mentioned a few opportunities today. We talked about the importance of safe space. We talked about the QPR training opportunities. We talked about the organization that Brother Lewis is a part of, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They're going around and trying to help educate and encourage us all to be more open and aware as to what's going on out there to help our youth, help our young Black men become older Black men in a healthy way as well. And then don't forget, there's a hotline out there now, 988. There's something that you're going through and you feel like you just are at a point where you need some help and you don't know where to turn. 988 is a resource 24/7 to be able to try to help you as well.
Sir.
Call
And
or
I just,
text.
call or text, exactly. And Keon, brother, I am, again, I said it again. I am just so proud of you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the relationship that we've been able to grow together and just seeing all that you are accomplishing and your passion and man, it just continues to drive hope. As Greg said, there's a path I think coming through Mecklenburg County
The
that's
path.
gonna go
I'm trying
out.
to carve
Yeah,
one out. I'm trying
you
to.
you are my brother. You are. You are.
Thank you, my brothers. Thank you.
Keon, you have anything final that you might want to say to our young Black men out there, and then we'll close it out with Rich.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, my brother Carr, thank you for extending my branch with these two new brothers that I can now call family. Rick, Greg, thank you for
Yes, sir.
welcoming me into this space.
Thank you.
For allowing me to be me, to be authentic, and to learn from you all, and to be a part of this necessary conversation. To our young brothers, I'm going to continue to tell you to protect your peace, protect your crown. You are worthwhile. Your life is worth living. You're not alone in this, and give yourself grace in this thing called life. It can be difficult. It can be complex. It can be nasty, but it can also be beautiful and inspiring too. And I
Yes, sir.
think that, what I appreciate most about this conversation is that, this is day one of BB Moore Campbell National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And so, or as you might also may hear, BIPOC Mental Health Month. So to kick it off with this conversation is timely, it is necessary, it is needed, and it has been a privilege to have been a part of it with you brothers. And I look forward to more future conversations. And who knows, maybe the next time when I come back, I'll come back to you as Dr. Keon Lewis as we have these
There we
conversations.
go.
But thank you, my brothers. Much love to you, and I appreciate y'all.
That's excellent. When you said that we just launched an episode a couple days ago on Michael Jackson versus Prince,
Mm.
that And then you said that phrase in there where you were just rapping. You said this thing called life, and that just
Right.
connected with me on that.
Let's go.
Gonna let the elevator.
Let's go
Right,
crazy.
right, right.
Imagine
Let's
that.
go
Go crazy and punch the higher floor. Right. So today's conversation wasn't meant to frighten anybody, right?
Right.
As we were talking about, these are important things that need to be discussed, but it was intended to save lives. If this conversation made you think of somebody, a son, a nephew, a brother, a friend, don't wait. Reach out, because that one conversation really can make a difference. Rewind back and listen to Keon's advice about how to go about having that conversation. First of all, that stigma, get past that stigma. Having this conversation isn't going to push them towards it. If anything, it's going to pull them back. You're not going to ignite the fire that makes them want to go ahead and do it. They've already been thinking about that. Any conversation you're having with them is going to try and cool that down. It's going to try and pull them back some and hopefully redirect them to something that's going to help them. But having that one conversation can really make a difference with someone. So John mentioned earlier, 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Take advantage of that. We hope that you got something from this conversation. I know I did. And Keon, it was a pleasure to meet you, brother, and I'm looking forward to the day when you become Dr. Lewis. So,
Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Let's do it.
as always, we ask that you like, follow, subscribe, share this conversation. There's some people out here that this conversation can help and that so share it with them and bring them on into the Raw and Refined fold. Once again, this is Raw and Refined, the Gentleman's Hour. We appreciate you all very much. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.